There was a time when every human lived in one place, not just spiritually, but physically. One homeland, one origin. And then something changed. A small group of humans, no more than a few hundred, left the only world they had ever known. Not in armies, not with flags, but on bare feet, through forests, deserts, and wind. This was not a conquest, this was survival. Before history had a name, before cities, gods, or borders. There was Africa, a vast, untamed land where time moved like stone. And the first humans opened their eyes. In what is now Ethiopia and Kenya, around 300,000 years ago, something extraordinary emerged. Not the first creature to walk upright, but the first to think like us. Homo sapiens. They weren't alone. Other human-like species had walked these lands for over 1 million years. Homo habilis, Homo erectus. But this was different. These new humans shaped finer tools. They moved with purpose. They remembered. They lived in small groups, tight-knit families spread across open savannas. They hunted together, shared food, cared for their young, and buried their dead. This wasn't just survival. It was society. Then, something deeper began to stir. Symbolic thought. They decorated bodies with pigments, carved shapes into stone, wore ornaments with no clear function. These weren't tools, they were expressions, signs of memory, of identity, of belief. But life here was never easy. Africa's climate shifted constantly. Droughts came and went. Lakes vanished. Herds moved. So did people. They didn't stay in one place for long. They walked, adapted, endured. The land forced them to be clever, to work together, to change. And one day, some of them didn't turn back. They followed the game, the water, the stars, toward lands unseen. They couldn't have known what lay ahead, but in their footsteps began the greatest journey in human history. Every person alive today carries a thread from that first beginning, a shared ancestry written in our blood. We are not visitors to Earth. We are from here, from there, from Africa. The story of humanity didn't start with conquest. It started with survival, curiosity, and the courage to walk into the unknown. They had lived in Africa for thousands of generations. They knew its rivers, its rhythms, its dangers. Africa wasn't just where they came from. It was the only world they had ever known. But the world was changing. Rains became scarce. Grasslands turned to dust. The animals they hunted moved farther and farther away, and so did they. This was not a single journey, but many, across centuries, across lifetimes. Not a conquest, but a response to change. Around 70,000 years ago, something remarkable happened. A small group of Homo sapiens, no more than a few hundred, left Africa. They walked across what is now the Red Sea, through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, not over water, but across a shallow, exposed land bridge during a time when sea levels were low. They may not have known they were leaving forever, but they never returned. It was not an easy path. The land was harsh, food was scarce, but these early humans carried something powerful with them: memory, language, fire, and imagination. They could plan, they could adapt, they could survive. The evidence of their journey is faint: a broken tool here, a charred bone there, fragments of shells used as ornaments. But together these traces tell a story of migration, of resilience, of a species on the move. From the Horn of Africa, they spread into Arabia, then to India, then beyond.
This was the first wave, the first humans to set foot outside their ancestral home. They didn't know what they would find. They only knew they had to keep going. The world beyond Africa was different. New animals, new climates, new challenges. And every place they entered, they adapted. Their tools changed. Their diets changed. Even their skin tones began to shift slowly, shaped by sun, altitude, and time. These first travelers didn't build civilizations, not yet, but they lit the fuse of everything that would follow. Language, culture, belief systems, societies. Their footsteps became roads. Their survival, our inheritance. Everyone alive today outside Africa descends from that small group. We are not scattered strangers. We are branches of the same tree, rooted in a single exodus, bound by a shared beginning. And it all started with the courage to leave.
Beyond the shores of Africa lay an untamed planet, a world no human had ever seen. Dense jungles, endless deserts, towering mountains, and creatures that had never encountered a species like us. But we came, slowly, in waves, adapting, surviving, and learning with every step. They arrived in India, then Southeast Asia, and eventually into the heart of Eurasia. By 50,000 years ago, humans had touched lands their ancestors couldn't imagine. They were no longer just Africans, they were Earthlings. Everywhere they went, the rules changed. New predators, new climates, new dangers. In Europe, they faced the bitter cold of Ice Age winters. In Southeast Asia, sweltering humidity and venomous wildlife. And yet, they adapted. They made warmer clothing, built better shelters, refined their tools. They didn't just survive in these new places, they thrived. Each group began to shape its own identity, a different way of speaking, of cooking, of honoring the dead. Culture was being born, not in temples, but in caves, around fires, in whispered stories passed from parent to child. Our ancestors were no longer a single people. They had become many, not just by appearance, but by language, diet, dress, belief. They became part of the land they walked on, shaped by it, and shaping it in return. They learned to fish the rivers, to follow the herds, to cross mountains and carve boats from trees. Each new landscape asked a question: can you survive here? And time and again, humanity answered, yes. But they weren't alone. In Europe and Western Asia, they met others, Neanderthals, not monsters as once believed, but fellow humans, strong, adapted, intelligent. And in some places, they didn't fight, they shared, they mated, they merged. Today, many of us carry fragments of that shared past, Neanderthal DNA inside our cells, like an echo from another branch of the human tree. As they spread, they left behind more than footprints. They left memory, in red ochre handprints, in carved flutes, in sacred stones aligned to the stars. The earth was no longer silent. It had a voice, and it spoke in human tongues. They didn't know they were shaping history. They weren't trying to conquer. They were trying to live. But in doing so, they built the roots of every culture that followed. The first farmers, the first builders, the first myths. All of it began here, on the far edge of the world they once called home.
For millions of years, Australia stood apart, a continent adrift, a land of ancient creatures and strange beauty. No human foot had ever touched it. Until one day, They came. They arrived by sea. The journey was long and dangerous. 40,000 years ago, perhaps more, small bands of humans crossed the ocean in handmade rafts, not knowing where they would land, not knowing if they would survive. But they made it, and nothing would ever be the same. Australia was a different world. Giant wombats, towering birds, kangaroos the size of trucks, creatures that had evolved in isolation. There were no other humans here, no Neanderthals, no Denisovans, just the land and its silence. Until the newcomers arrived and left their mark. They didn't build cities, but they built memory, etched into the rock, painted in caves, handprints that still reach across millennia. The Aboriginal Australians, descendants of those first migrants, carry the oldest continuous culture in the world. Their stories speak of dream time, a sacred age before time began, when ancestral spirits shaped the land, the rivers, the stars. They remembered, in story, in song, in ceremony. A map not made of ink, but of song lines, paths sung into existence, traced across thousands of miles by rhythm and memory. Their connection to the land wasn't just survival, it was sacred. Archaeologists found them, footprints frozen in time. One man sprinting, another walking beside a child, moments preserved for over 20,000 years. And yet, those moments feel familiar. They adapted, they innovated, they passed down knowledge across unbroken generations. Their tools were simple, yet effective. Their stories, older than pyramids, older than Stonehenge. Today, their presence still echoes, in language, in art, in land stewardship and song. Not a vanished world, but a living one, still here. Australia was not discovered. It was never empty. It was remembered, sung into being, long before the rest of the world even knew it existed. And the people who first crossed that ocean, they are still here. They always were.
At the edge of the world, a narrow land once connected two mighty continents, Asia and North America. We call it Beringia. For thousands of years, it was a frozen bridge, buried under snow, swept by wind, but wide enough for herds to roam and for humans to follow. They came chasing the animals, the mammoths, the bison, the caribou. They didn't know they were entering a new world, but every step they took was a step into history. For a long time, it was believed they crossed around 13,000 years ago, the Clovis first theory. But that's not the whole story. New evidence is rewriting the timeline. Fossilized footprints in New Mexico, dated to nearly 23,000 years ago. People were here, long before we once thought possible. Who were they? And how did they survive? They adapted fast. To glaciers, to forests, to deserts. They followed the rivers, hugged the coasts, and carved out life where none had been before. The Americas were a primordial Eden, teeming with life.
beasts that had never seen a human, that had no fear yet. And in the blink of an evolutionary eye, everything changed. Humans became apex predators with intelligence, coordination, and tools sharper than claws. They hunted, not just for survival, but with strategy, with memory, with fire. And they brought something else: story. They painted their lives onto canyon walls, chronicled the beasts they hunted and the spirits they believed guided them. Culture wasn't carried in wagons. It was carried in minds, in myths, in memory. From the Arctic tundra to the jungles of the Amazon, humans adapted to the extremes. Over millennia, they became many peoples. The ancestors of the Inuit, the Navajo, the Maya, the Quechua, and they laid the foundations for empires yet to rise. They crossed a land of ice and found fire. They journeyed across continents without knowing there were continents. They were not explorers, not conquerors. They were survivors, dreamers. They gave voice to a silent land.
We were never meant to stand still. Movement is in our blood. Across deserts, rivers, mountains, oceans, we've always walked forward. From the heart of Africa to the ice fields of the Arctic, to the jungles of the Amazon and the peaks of the Andes, we journeyed, not just with our feet, but with our dreams. Every one of us carries that journey inside, in our bones, in our blood, in the stories we inherit without even knowing. Your ancestors moved through fire, across ice, under stars, and so did mine. And theirs, borders came later, lines drawn by war and law, but long before that, we were simply people, following the land, the food, the hope. We weren't separated by continents, we were connected by curiosity. That same curiosity is still with us. It built the pyramids, it painted the caves, it crossed the oceans, and now it launches us into space. We've gone from walking barefoot on the savannah to sending machines beyond the planets. And yet, we are the same species that once crouched by a fire and whispered stories into the dark. We are still wanderers, still storytellers, still human. Across time, across skin, across language, we are family. We all came from the same place. We still share the same home. Out of Africa we came, into the world we spread, and onward we go. Our journey is far from over. If this journey moved you, share what you felt in the comments. And if you'd like to keep exploring the hidden stories of our past, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter of humanity's great adventure.